My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, a music podcast where we chat to a new guest each week, talk about their life and creative endeavours, and talk to them about some of the music they love. Our show works by chatting to our guests about music, their songwriting techniques, and occasionally getting them to make you a playlist of the songs they love. Welcome to episode 175. I'm your host, Simon Fink. Our guest today is Kav Temperley. The Eskimo Joe frontman is once again stepping out on his own with his forthcoming second record entitled Machines of Love and Grace. In today's episode, we're speaking with Kav about new single Graduation Day, getting back to normal touring, and love letters to cities. Here we go. Our guest today is the frontman for one of Australia's most loved bands, Eskimo Joe. Having previously stepped out with a solo record in 2018, he returns next month with a brand new one entitled Machines of Love and Grace, and has in turn released a brilliant single in the form of Graduation Day, which features Katy Steele. All right. Please welcome to This Song Is Yours. Please welcome back to This Song Is Yours, Kav Temperley. Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having us back.
My absolute pleasure, Kav. Thank you very much. Firstly, before we do dive into anything too deep about what is currently going on with yourself and solo music, I do want to say a very quick thank you. You were very kind enough in October 2020 to be our very first guest on this podcast. And so I think that did help when people were asking who have we had on and who has kind of been on the pod. So thank you very much for back then, for opening some doors for us and just also being an absolutely lovely first guest.
All right, good, excellent. I'm glad I made the podcast. I'll wait for the royalty check in the mail because, as we know, podcasting is where the money's at. So.
There is a good $3.48 coming your way, yes.
Fantastic.
Now, at that time, we were talking about Eskimo Joe, we were talking about Say Something, but today we're here to talk about yourself and the new solo record coming out from you and the new single, Graduation Day. So firstly, congrats on this single. It is a brilliant, brilliant track.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I'm really happy how it all came out. There's always a scary moment when you're writing and recording a song because, you know, starting an idea is easy. You know, you play it on the guitar and you're like, yeah, this song's great. And then you start to record it. And then there's always a moment where you're like, yeah, it's kind of a little bit shit compared to how I heard it in my head. And so you have a kind of free fall moment. And then somehow in that moment of sheer, you know, oh my God, don't make this terrible, you end up doing lots of work and the song comes together. So I had a moment with the song when I was like recording it. I was really happy with the writing of the song. And I actually called up Joel from Eskimo Joe and I was like, hey, can you have a listen to this song? Because I think it's there, you know, like but I'm not sure. And he had a listen and he was like, oh yeah, you know, just put a bit there and make that bit happen over there. And, you know, he gave me some production dynamic ideas and I was like, oh, of course, you know, and it all came together.
It is a lovely new track and it does feature another well-known Perth artist in the form of Katy Steele. I'm curious, firstly, I want to know how she kind of got involved in the track, but I did hear in my research kind of came across the fact that at one point Katy was going to be part of Eskimo Joe or part of the touring band of Eskimo Joe around maybe A Song Is a City era?
Yeah, we had this great jam room out the back of our house when we were living behind the Beaky Tavern in Beaconsfield. And there was lots of bands jamming there, and there was, End of Fashion, and who's Katy's boyfriend at the time was in End of Fashion, and then Sleepy Jackson was there as well, who's Katy's older brother, and a bunch of other bands. But Katy was kind of hanging around, and brilliant. We were doing some shows together where she would accompany me doing acoustic shows, and I was writing the songs for Songs of the City at the time. And she could play piano really well, and I was saying to the guys, we should get Katy, to play piano with us, because she can play piano well and she can sing, and it'd be great. And somewhere in the process, she showed us the songs that would become the first Little Birdie EP, and all of us were like, who are we kidding? You need to go off and become a musical goddess. Don't join Eskimo Joe. That would be the worst decision of your life. And luckily she listened to us, and so Little Birdie, the band that she was in, kind of formed in that back shed. Those songs ended up getting demoed there, and then, there was some record company interests, and away she went.
It sounds like it kind of all worked out as it was meant to, but I'm glad that there's kind of been this reconnection now, because the track seems to work beautifully. Katy obviously does have a very unique voice, and I know that Australia absolutely loves that beautiful timbre of your voice as well, that it is a beautiful melding of two voices. How did she then get involved in Graduation Day?
Well, I guess we were kind of hanging out a bit because she's moved back to Perth, and part of the thing of making a solo record is you spend long periods of time in a room by yourself wondering if what you've done is absolutely rubbish or genius. And at a certain point, I just called up Katy and I was like, can you come and help me work on this song? And she did, and the song was already, the storyline was really about the fact that if you live in Perth, it's just such an isolated place in the world, and especially during this whole lockdown COVID period, it's felt even more isolated. And it really opened up my eyes to, the people who were living here and who had been doing the same old thing they've been doing for years, and really how, especially being a musician, you had to leave Perth if you really wanted to make something of yourself. Like, no one was going to come in and discover you. So I was telling my story, and then, Katy had also left and gone to New York for a while, and then gone to New Zealand, and then lived on the East Coast, and finally, found love and made it back to Perth and was really happy. So we're both telling these, similar stories, and it was just, again, when you're sitting in a room writing by yourself, it's just such a joy to have someone come in and be able to jam with you. And me and Katy have sung together so many times over the years. It was really great to, create a moment where we could actually do that, on record forever.
Yeah, of course. The record that you are referring to, this second record from yourself, is Machines of Love and Grace, which I believe is out some point in September.
I think about September 11th or 20th or something. I'm not sure.
Oh, beautiful. So very, very soon we'll be able to get our hands on it. This second record, I feel like the first solo record is always a little bit of there's a little bit more anxiety, whatever you kind of want to call it, but I feel that the second one is a little bit easier. How has it been this time around recording and I guess getting everything ready?
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The first record, I think I was trying to work out who I was as a musical act outside of Eskimo Joe, and that can end up having a lot of overthinking that goes into that. But I was really proud and really happy with my first record. Whereas this album, I really haven't stopped and thought about it at all. I just, I was at home. I knew that I wanted to I was writing songs, and last time we spoke, I was writing a bunch of these songs, wondering whether they were going to be an Eskimo Joe record or a Kav Temperley album. And we did a couple of songs, and I guess the way that Eskimo Joe work now is they're very much like, it used to be I would present a bunch of songs and they would turn into the Eskimo Joe album. And now it's really more about, we have to sit down in a room together and write a song from scratch. And so I had all these songs already written, and I was like, well, that's not going to happen with these songs. So I guess it's going to be a solo album. And it was much easier, and everything happened by necessity because it was during the lockdown period. So a lot of it was recorded at my studio in Fremantle, and a lot of the musicians who played on it are just, the people who were around in Fremantle, who are all great musos, but, they were, just the people who live down the road. And again, that all, and even the title track Machines of Love and Grace has got all these great percussion sounds on it. And that's because one of the guys I share the studio with is a percussionist. And I was like, hey, do you want to play some percussion on this? And he was like, sure. How about this? How about that? So it was all done by necessity. But there's something really beautiful about this album is, when you have endless options, like you're like, oh, I could go to this studio in LA and I could record drums there, or I could go over here and do my vocals in this place, or I could write with this person over there. When you have no options, all you have is like just literally, 5 kilometer radius from your house. It's quite refreshing. You just go, cool, all right, let's just get down to it. And the album feels a lot more effortless in its delivery this time round, I think.
Would you say that, because I know that when kind of really focusing on a place, or really being, I guess, having a place, what's the correct phrasing of this? Being enamored or absorbed by a place.
Yeah.
I was trying to make sure I was not sounding too weird when I said it. That it can be a bit of a love letter to that city or to that place. Would you say that this new record is somewhat of a bit of a love letter, a bit of a your versions of Springsteen's New Jersey or whatever it may be?
Yeah, there's a bit of that going on. I mean, I definitely touched on those themes massively when with the album A Song as a City with Eskimo Joe was definitely that for me. It was really about, living in Fremantle in my mid-20s. This, I don't know if it's like a love letter to Fremantle where I live, but really what it is it's more of a reflection of what I was going through mentally, physically, and spiritually during the whole lockdown period. I managed to not get the lyrics an unprecedented moment in time. I didn't get those lyrics into the album, and that's okay. But it really was about documenting this unprecedented moment in time we were living through, which I think is a really important job for artists. I think we should write about what's in front of us. It's the only way that I like to, process information is when someone writes a record about it or creates art around it. That for me makes sense. So I was just trying to do my job and document everything that was going on without being too like, and then we got the vaccination. I wasn't writing COVID the musical, but I did want to touch on some really important subjects which I think are universal, and some of them are kind of brand new universal subjects. Like the title track is about the fact that we have these phones and we live this very intimate relationship through these phones now. And I don't know about you, but I was having drinks with people on our back porch and we were all in lockdown, and the connectivity was amazing. But at the same time, you just like a packet of delicious crisps or something. Your brain switches off, and the next thing you know, you've clicked on the Instagram app and you're looking and like, why am I looking at this again? And you find yourself casually stalking someone. It's weird, man, but like we can't live without it, and it's quite an intimate relationship we have. So that was one of the themes. There's a song, funnily enough, called "Last of the Wine," which is my mother-in-law asked me to write a song about domestic violence because she was saying there's a whole lot of domestic violence going on through this lockdown period. All these people are locked in houses with each other when normally they'd be able to just, get away. So she kind of gave me this article which had all of this, all these facts of, what had happened with domestic violence. So I started to write this song, based on my own experience of being stuck in a room with a piano and not being able to get out of my room. But yeah, I tried to kind of just touch on those themes of alcoholism and domestic violence without being too heavy about it. So, and the list goes on. Anyway, there's the songs kind of really document all the stuff that was going on at the time. And I hope that it stands up as itself as a piece of work, that people listen to it and go, that's a cool album that can exist in any moment in time. But I'm proud of the fact that, I did my job as a musical journalist and got to document what was going on.
Yeah, of course. Well, obviously, I haven't heard much of the album as of yet, but I imagine that there will be a number of people who will feel that, who will think that you have documented it quite well. And I'm kind of curious. I know that you mentioned before in that first album, kind of working out who you are outside of Eskimo Joe, and then this one it was kind of just doing what came naturally to you. I guess when you're writing songs like that and you're trying to work out for this record, trying to create and write lyrics to these brand new songs, is there much of like a...
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
At BlueNile.com, you can find endless ways to make your moments sparkle. From classic and timeless jewelry gifts to creating the custom engagement ring of her dreams, all at prices you won't find at a traditional jeweler. And right now, you can save up to 40% on fine jewelry and 25% on engagement ring settings during the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale, going on now. Go to BlueNile.com to shop the Blue Nile Anniversary Sale and save up to 40%. That's BlueNile.com.
Not a fight, but like trying to work almost against yourself and trying to just go with the flow of letting these songs happen naturally? Or is it that you have to kind of find certain parameters to make it sound like a Kav song, not an Eskimo Joe song?
I think I did that more with the first record, whereas this time around I just was like, fuck it. I'm just gonna play instruments and I'm gonna sing and it's gonna be what it is. And I think I've just rested on my the history of who I am a bit more and just gone, this is the music I like and this is the sounds that I like, and there's probably some familiar sounds in there where people will be like, oh, that sounds a bit Eskimo Joey, but that's because I'm the dude from Eskimo Joe. I write those songs and I'm doing a lot of the production work on that as well. So the same can be said for, anyway, with this record, I just really I just didn't overthink it. I just sat down and didn't think, well, I need to capture like a perfect, early 70s guitar sound for this one. So, I just wanted to really showcase the songs more than anything else. I always try and make the best sonic sounding record I can. I always, my theory is that it's got to sound like you got to be able to press play on it next to your favorite albums and it should sound like a similar beast, I guess. It was refreshing not overthinking everything.
100%. I think what was the record recently? I don't know if you're across the record by The Smile, who had it's great.
And
it's when people like The Smile sounds too much like Radiohead, and it's like, well, because it's three of the guys from Radiohead, so of course it does.
I thought that was refreshingly fun, that record, and it just proves that those guys are just tragic musical lifers who'll just keep putting out records whether anyone wants to listen to them or not. And thankfully, people do want to listen to them.
At the moment, I believe that there are some tour dates for yourself. You're doing a bit of what is billed as part one of the tour. You catching up with some regional cities. What can people expect from some of these shows, and can they expect to hear some of these new songs as well?
Yeah, I'll be playing a bunch of the brand new songs, so everyone will get to be the litmus test for this album. I'll be able to see what songs are working and what songs don't work, and there's still time. If a song just goes down really badly every night, I'll be like, well, let's take that one off the record. No, I'll play a bunch of new songs, some of the songs from my last solo record, but also, playing songs from the Eskimo Joe back catalogue in the style of what they sounded like when I first played them to the band. And a really good example is a song like Foreign Land. When I first wrote that, I was in New York and we played this big gala in New York called G'day USA, and we were about to walk down the red carpet when a very official looking man came up to me and said, "Oh, just let you know, Heath Ledger has just died." And we were obviously very taken aback because he was this very young, talented guy from Perth, Western Australia, where we were from. And turns out he'd died, streets away from where I was walking that afternoon, in the East Village. And I was really affected by it. So I sat down with my acoustic guitar and started to write this song, which sounded more like a ballad. It was this really sad kind of, this guy just died. It wasn't meant to be a fun song. But then when we got home, we'd been playing to these really big crowds, and as a band, you end up adapting to who you're playing to. You're like, so the bigger the crowd, the bigger the song. Things get bigger and bigger. And so the guys were like, okay, we need a big song. And I was like, how about this? And so we just sped up this ballad that I'd written, and it turned into Foreign Land, which is this huge bombastic Led Zeppelin kind of number, which is great. But I'm really excited to be able to play what that song sounded like before it became, the song that people hopefully know and love.
Well, 100%. Even as you're kind of telling this story, I'm just thinking of the lyrics, and they now take on a whole different context with this story and with that kind of piece behind it. So I'm very curious to kind of see, how some of these songs were, I guess, the original interpretation.
Yeah, so there'll be a bunch of that, and the beautiful thing about playing solo shows away from the band is I can tell really long-winded stories, and there's no bandmates behind me going, "Kav, start the next song." So that's part of the show as well as the extremely long-winded stories. I've also got, for the lucky few who get to make it to the theatre shows that I'm doing some pub shows, but I'm trying to get into as many actual theatres as I possibly can, just little theatres, because I've got all these really great visuals that I've edited together, and they're taken from old turn of the century silent horror films, and I've just edited them together into this kind of weird David Lynch dreamscape, and that kind of projects on the background while I play along, and it's very moody.
That's very, very cool. I am looking forward to trying to get along to one, and we are going to put the link in the show notes as well, so people can purchase tickets for those.
Beautiful.
I think last time when we were speaking, it was late 2020, and I think that the next show you were going to play was for Eskimo Joe, but I believe it was on a revolving stage between 4 different areas.
Yes.
And so I'm curious how that played out, and if it's going to, I guess, how it's going now, the return to playing live gigs, and if there's any more revolving apparatus on the stage with you.
Well, yeah, that was hilarious because, they'd worked out, they had this festival called Good Day Sunshine, and they'd worked out that they could put 1,500 people or 500 people or something in each section. So they got this revolving stage for all the bands to be on. So they'd be playing to all these different sections. And I think it was literally one of those, those car display things that they have in, car showrooms. Anyway, we were driving there, and it looked like it was about to rain, and I felt like, World War I was about to go over the, over the trenches and be, gunned down. But we got there, and because we're also playing acoustically, which is not really, an Eskimo Joe thing. But we got there and played this show, and it was so awesome. Like as you turned, you just kind of like lose eyesight with one group, and then you'd make eyesight with the next group. And then I got off stage, and I was like, I don't know if I can do a show without a revolving stage now. I really felt like I was embracing my inner Bono. It was great fun. But no, that was the first and last revolving stage I've been on, but I'm open to more revolving stages. I did feel really sorry for Xavier Rudd, who had travelled all the way from wherever he lives on the East Coast and quarantined for 2 weeks. And when he got on stage, the power just kept tripping, and he's got this, 20 didgeridoos in front of him, and and a djembe and an acoustic guitar, and he's playing all of them at the same time, of course. But he's got this really big, long-winded kind of, Shine On You Crazy Diamond with didgeridoos kind of intro going on, and the power kept tripping, and he kept starting this thing over and over again. So I was like, oh man, I was trying to psychically tell him, I was like, just move on to the next song. So that went for about 2 hours, the poor guy, and he'd like I said, he'd traveled a long way, spent 2 weeks by himself in quarantine, and only to have the revolving stage bite him in the bum. Moving on, I should say. So now getting out there and playing, big live Eskies shows again, it's an absolute pleasure because I guess music as a commodity feels like a much more rare and expensive thing. I think leading up to the lockdown period, you'd go to a bar and people would be like, oh, there's a band playing. Should we come back later? And now people are like, oh my God, there's a band playing. Quick, let's go. I think and we played this really big show the other day over here in Perth, and it was for WA Day. So there was like, it was like one of those royal shows, crossed with Lollapalooza, basically. It was huge. There was so many people there. It was a big free concert, and there was us and Birds of Tokyo and a bunch of other bands playing. Anyway, I was looking at all these guys in the front row, and they were all like, about 23 years old, just rocking out, loving it. And then I realized afterwards, if you do the maths, like they would have just turned 18 when the lockdowns happened. So for them, this is the first live gig experience that they're going to. And they just look like they were absolutely loving it. So I think hopefully that stays around. I don't think the confidence of people buying tickets is still up there yet, because as we know, there's still these big waves of COVID coming through, and it doesn't look good. But I really hope that, people kind of go out and support their favorite bands, because, we need it, man. Like the industry needs it, because, let's face it, you're not going to make any money from doing podcasts or streaming your music on Spotify. So we need people to go buy tickets. It's a really important way that we make money as a band.
100%. It is both for yourself as the solo tour, and as you mentioned, Eskies are going out on tour again September, October, finally, because I think they were postponed once, if not twice.
Yes.
What are we celebrating? We're celebrating both Black Fingernails, Red Wine and the Song of the Sea.
It's a long, convoluted title. It's Black Fingernails in the City Tour, I believe it's called. And we're basically playing our two albums, Songs of the City and Black Fingernails, Red Wine, which are two really important records for us and our fans. And we're playing them in their entirety from start to finish. So if you're fans of those records, then that'd be a cool show to come along to.
100%. My wife and I already have our tickets for Adelaide when you guys do make it down here.
Fantastic.
I realise it's a bit of an unfair question to ask any parent, if we're kind of using this analogy, but from both records, is there one or two tracks that kind of stand out as one or two that are close to your heart?
Look, both of those records are close to my heart all the way through. And, I'm sure that when we finished writing and recording that record and touring it, I probably was like, I'm not into this music anymore. I just want to make the new sound. But now, with, a few years under my belt, I look back at those albums with, great affection, because they were just such, a harmonious time making music. I mean, A Song as a City was a really interesting record because we were kind of like musical orphans, and we'd taken some terrible advice and tried to get out of our record deal. So we basically were writing this record, not knowing whether it was ever going to come out. We started to record it with our own money. And then even when we had recorded most of it, we just got our head around recording software. So we went home and recorded files and files of music. And then mix it with a really fantastic chap called Nick Launay, who's done some really big records, and he taught us a lot. And then with Black Fingernails, we went in and recorded that ourselves. We got an engineer, produced it ourselves, and just backed ourselves. And it was a really successful venture. It was a really harmonious time. Everyone was getting along really well, pulling in the same direction. And then there's lots of songs on those albums that I love, but if you just, as the dust settles, songs like Black Fingernails, Red Wine and From the Sea are possibly two of our most important songs that we've ever written. And, we finish every show off with, when we play live with Eskies, with From the Sea. And we do this before we walk on stage to play a show. Backstage, we do this thing called the clapping game to warm up, where we basically do a competition to see everyone's got to clap as fast as possible, and the last person clapping wins. It's always Stu, therefore he's probably cheating. And then we finish the show off by playing From the Sea, and we get the whole crowd to clap along, and we do the oh-oh-oh-ohs, they're both good oh-oh-oh-oh songs as well. But we do this oh-oh-oh-oh, and the band drops out and everybody else is singing along in the audience, and we get them all clapping along, and then we get them clapping faster and faster and faster and faster. So we almost kind of finish off where the gig starts every single time. And that's always a great moment, and it never gets old playing that song. You know, Black Fingernails, I've played it a million times. Still love the song. I don't get quite the same, you know, feeling that I get from probably playing From the Sea, because there's just something about the DNA in that song that is just Eskimo Joe, I think.
1000%. I think, oh my gosh, the time frame is a little bit off, but I think there was maybe last year performance with yourself and Stella Donnelly, with Eskimo Joe and Stella Donnelly at one of the WA museums where you did From the Sea, and that, I feel like, as you just kind of said, not to pinch your words, but the DNA of that song is just incredible, because it just still is absolutely magic. However, where are we, like almost 20 years on?
Yeah, it still feels fresh for me playing that song, so that's always a good sign. Always a good sign, and I imagine always makes it a bit easier for you as well as the performer, as the artist. Kav, very quickly, usually we would ask our guests what they're currently listening to, if there's something at the moment that's kind of taken your fancy on your record player or streaming service, respectively. God, that's a really hard question. I would probably have to bring up my Spotify playlist. I do listen to a lot of vinyl at home as well. So is this going to actually let me do this? Yes, it is. So let's have a look at what is on my most recent playlist. In fact, I've always got a playlist on the go, and I'm probably the furthest behind on my most. I've got one called Saxy Good Times, and the reason why that's called Saxy Good Times is because the opening track to my new record is called Emergency in D minor, and it's this like big epic Shine On You Crazy Diamond synth intro. A couple of things. I know this is a long-winded answer, but upstairs from my studio is this place called the Synth Lab, and it's these guys, and they've set it up like it looks like the inside of a 60s television show spaceship, and it's just wall to floor of synths, and you can go in and send all of your MIDI through there and record all these synths. So the intro to the song, I think saxophone still has a place, but I don't get into this kind of ironic 80s sax, because that was a bad era for saxophone. But in the 70s, there was some cool-ass saxophone. So I've created a playlist to give to the lady who's going to come in next week and play saxophone. She was the same lady who played at the grand final with us, a girl called Erin. And so I've got 4 songs on there, which are my saxophone songs. There's Pinball by Brian Prothero. And if you haven't heard this song, it is super cool. It's like he didn't really write that many songs. He was an actor, I think, an English guy, but Pinball is super cool. Brian Prothero. There's Walk on the Wild Side. That's got an awesome saxophone break in it, and it's actually David Bowie and Mick Ronson produced that record just post Ziggy Stardust era, and it's actually David Bowie's saxophone teacher playing saxophone on that one. And then Shine On Your Crazy Diamond, yeah, right, which also at about the 15-minute mark or whatever has a great sax solo. And then in more modern times, Playground Love by Air is really that same vibe, and it's just this super kind of just the sax players sound like they're playing really quietly, and it's just cool. So that's my Saxy Good Times playlist, and I don't know if that answers your question, but that's what I've been listening to.
It definitely does answer the question, and it is sometimes we get I guess like new releases or what might be trending, if you will, or whatever else, but I think that I actually appreciate that honest insight into what is currently on your streaming service, and you allowed us to be privy to your Sexy Good Time. So thank you very much for that, Kav.
Well, now when you hear the song, you'll be like, oh, okay, I get it. I get what he was trying to do there. So I'm recording the saxophone on Monday, and you can let me know whether I pulled it off or not.
We will let you know, but Kav, as for now, thank you very much for your time today. I do appreciate it. The brand new single is Graduation Day. The new record coming out in September is Machines of Love and Grace. But thank you once again for coming on the podcast, Kav.
Thank you so much for having us once again.
And that's our show. A massive thank you to Kav Temperley for his time. Graduation Day is out now, and Machines of Love and Grace is out in September. We've left links in the show notes if you'd like to stream the single or catch him on tour. We also want to give a huge shout out to Nadia at On The Map PR for helping out with today's interview. If you like this show, please subscribe wherever you get your pods and stay up to date when new episodes are released. We release new shows each Wednesday and Friday morning, and we now have a Patreon, which you can find within the show notes of this episode. You can follow the playlist profile on Spotify, and you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Until next week, cheers.
Imagine the softest sheets you've ever felt. Now imagine them getting even softer over time. That's what you'll feel with Boll & Branch's best-selling signature sheets in 100% organic cotton. In a recent customer survey, 96% replied that Boll & Branch sheets get softer with every wash. Start getting your best night's sleep in sheets that get softer and softer for years to come. Try their sheets with a 30-night guarantee. Plus, get 15% off your first order at bollandbranch.com, code BUTTERY. Exclusions apply. See site for details.